All right, good evening. We're going to kick this off. I know we still got a couple of people coming, but we want to be on time. So first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming out tonight. It's a bad time of year with graduations and a lot going on. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bob Cooney, the chief of the Hillcrest Fire Department. Again, thank you very much for coming out. This is a very important topic. We're all going to be disciples to get this word out after tonight, hopefully. So a lot of good information. We have two very good guests tonight, and I'm very excited for this. A couple thanks off the bat. Mechanicville School District, Kevin Kolakowski, Superintendent, for allowing us to use this room. A few months ago, we did landing zone training at our firehouse. We had 80 people, and that was tight. So when we started putting this together, I thought, where can we do this and have enough room and be comfortable doing it? I reached out to the school. They said, sure, anything you need. We have a good relationship with the school. So again, thank you very much to Kevin. Food and drinks tonight out in the vestibule, sponsored by Mike Rauchi and New Country Toyota of Clifton Park. Mike is a huge supporter of first responders, fire, police, EMS, of the community in Mechanicville. Anything we need, we can always call Mike, and he's always there for us. So Mike Rauchi, New Country Toyota, Clifton Park, thank you very much. I also want to thank our department, Hillcrest, support and active members for helping me pull this together. So I know we're not done yet, but let's hope the night goes as planned. The battery stays green in this microphone, and we'll be good to go. Obviously, with all presentations in a auditorium, fire exits are up front here. Cell phones and pagers on vibrate if you could. So motivation for organizing this. Why Hillcrest? Why did we come up with this? So in my 18 years of being in the volunteer fire service, some at Shaker Road, some at Hillcrest, I can think back to every situation where a fatality or a near-death incident had occurred. And in my mind, I can picture the exact scene, the name of those involved. Steve DeGroff, you're in the crowd here. I can tell you exactly where we worked the scene together, and that was 20 years ago at this point. I can describe the grim detail, how the incident played out, and it's just how the mind is wired. I could be driving along now and drive by a house and know exactly what happened at that house. And my time in the fire service trails in comparison to some of the giants in the room. Chief Palmieri, Chief Parker, Chief McBride, Jimmy, Johnny. Again, I'm sure you guys have seen a lot more than me. But we tend to leave these scenes at the end of the night. When we're finished, we go back home, go back to the station, we go back to our families. And then for some time, this plays out time and time again, and there's no doubt it takes its toll on the mental well-being. So unfortunately, each year we lose someone near and dear to us, whether a coworker, colleague, fellow brother and sister, for whom we eventually find out possibly stress of everyday life was just too much for them to take. And in the days that follow the tragic passing, we post on social media, we say, rest in peace, brother or sister, we'll take it from here. But I ask the question, what are we really doing to take it from here? What are we doing to prevent this from happening again? Are we addressing the underlying problem? I'm going to say no, and that's why we're here tonight. And that in part leads to why these two gentlemen are here. I'll start with Captain John Cooney, retired police captain from Troy Police Department. I had the pleasure of attending a keynote address that John gave back in December 2022. I'll always remember the address, I'll remember the date, because it left it stuck in my mind here. It was a regional construction conference in Saratoga, and what does John know about construction? Probably nothing, but I'll tell you this. You would be surprised to hear that the construction industry has one of the highest rates of suicide in the U.S. at a rate of 4 times higher than the national average and 5 times greater than the cause of all other construction fatalities combined. John spoke about how during anxious tragedy-laden times in our world today, we aren't talking enough. It's not the norm to approach others with concerns or questions in support for someone's mental health. But that needs to change, and we all need to accept the challenge of checking in with others. John's words hit home for me and checked all the boxes of the challenges that we face in the fire service. So earlier this year, I decided this was time. I needed to reach out to John, so I Facebook stalked him and sent him a message. And here we are. So the next few months, I got to know John pretty well. Phone conversations, text messages back and forth. He's a great man, really cares about others, passionate about this topic, and he's always willing to give time to listen. Also, I've learned he swears like a sailor, and I question his golf skills, but those two things might be related. Once the date was set and I knew John was locked in, I started seeing other venues with Doc Barry. This is Dr. Andrew Doc Barry over here. He's a former volunteer firefighter EMT, owner of a private practice, full-time psychologist, psychoanalyst, specializing in PTSD in veterans and first responders. Someone that I admire greatly said to me, Doc gets into your soul when he talks, and there's just something with him. You'll leave there a changed person. So I reached out to Doc and I said, you know what, why do this separately? Why don't we share the podium and invite Doc? Fortunately, he was available this night. We've had a good group text conversation going back since that time. And again, it's good therapy for me, and I can't wait to hear these two talk. So without further ado, in the words of Doc himself, sit back and enjoy the show.
Okay. Everybody hear me? Everybody see me? Jesus, I hope so. I should do this well at my funeral. All right. Yeah. So, what we're going to do tonight is, yes, we're going to be talking about post-traumatic stress disorder and other joyous topics. And what Bob was saying goes double for me. In the middle of the week, during a busy time of year, by all means, let's leave our nice air-conditioned houses and our swimming pools and our color television sets and our animals and our phones to listen to trauma. It's a real hard sell, and I appreciate everybody being here. So, tonight, I do this anecdotally. I use a storytelling approach. I do not sit here and route out the latest terms, facts, and figures from the DSM or anything like that. To me, that kind of dehumanizes the process. And I'm not going after tenure. If I did this as a normal psychology presentation, everybody in this room would be asleep inside 2 minutes. And that's not what we're doing here. I gotta wake you guys up. So, welcome to the show. So, what we're gonna be talking about tonight is, and I'm using this term as a term of convenience, we're gonna be talking about the old chief. Now, I'm using that as a catch-all term. Doesn't necessarily have to be a chief. It can be a sergeant, a middle-aged lieutenant, an old black hat, an elderly captain. And I'm here to tell you also, it doesn't have to be an old, somebody who's especially old at all. We just lost a 17-year-old newly minted EMT from, I think, Stillwater, if I recall correctly. But also, we lost somebody else about 2 years ago, something like that. And since this person, who I will name, passed, every time I do this, This talk is dedicated to his memory. I want to introduce you guys to none other than Lieutenant Ryan J. Gagliardi. He spent his entire tour of duty at Fuller Road Fire Station. This guy was a prodigy in every sense of the word. Started and finished high school early. Started and finished community college early. Was all signed up to take the, I believe, the sheriff's exam, if I recall correctly. This guy wanted to be a first responders. He excelled in everything he did. And he was 21 years old. He was first lieutenant of Fuller Road Fire Department. Had everything going for him. And one day, for reasons we still have yet to fathom, Lieutenant Ryan J. Gagliardi, at the age of 21, put a bullet in his mouth and ended himself. When I first heard this, I'll be honest with you, I was so goddamn pissed. My first reaction when I heard this, like, what the fuck are you doing? Now, where did that come from, Doc? I'm glad you asked. He and I did EMT class together. He knew me. I knew him. He was very supportive of the mental health message. He actually sent patients my way. He knew what I was all about. But he was thinking about this shit, couldn't call me, couldn't call anybody else. And I'm telling you this god-awful story, this cautionary tale of woe for yet another reason, because for the fifth time I have done the old chief presentation, Ryan's grieving parents have come to watch the show. They are here with us this evening, Bob, Cindy, Gagliardi. They volunteer to drive wherever to see me do this because they believe in the message and they don't want anyone else to go through the hell that they have gone through. Let's put it this way, folks. When we put our parents in the ground, which I have done, many in this room have done probably as well, it's difficult to find the words of loss and grief, but it can be done when we put our parents in the ground and the universe unfolds as it should. However, when a parent puts a child in the ground, there are no words in any dictionary from any corner of the globe of which I am aware that adequately describes that loss. So, I recognize Cindy and Bob as I have done, and I will continue to do as long as they follow me around for this errand of mercy. If anybody has lost a child, if anybody, God forbid, has lost a child to suicide, Bob and Cindy are right here. They speak a language far better than I ever could. If anybody in this room ever has thought about it, in addition to what I have to say tonight, talk to Bob and Cindy. They are here because they support to their last breath the idea that this epidemic has got to stop. You hear what I just said to you? This epidemic has got to stop. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, we are killing ourselves. Literally.
I'm Dan.
Say again?
No, that was me making sure that you knew that I swear, like, what do I swear like? So after I did that, I swore.
Fuck yeah. We can have a few laughs here. It's the only way to get through it. And I have a pretty dire sense of humor, too. After running around after you people all these years. It's rubbed off. Thank you all very much. But anyway, thank you to Bob and Cindy for this errand of mercy, for putting themselves emotionally in harm's way again and again to help me drive home this message. Thank you both. Love to you both. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the old chief. And we're going to ask ourselves, how did this guy or this gal, this old chief, this young lieutenant, this middle-aged sergeant, whoever, again, I'm using the old chief or whatever as a term of convenience, so I'm going to stick with that. How did this old chief get that way? Right? We look at this guy, we consider this guy. Who is this man or this woman, and how did they wind up this way? Right? Maybe we'll have a few clues bandied about in tonight's talk. But first, let me give you a nice down-home, folksy definition of what post-traumatic stress disorder is. It's when a person is on the receiving end of, they think their physical safety, their mortal safety is in danger. I mean, in fear for their lives, reasonable fear for their life, reasonable thought of it, or loss of life or dismemberment, or seeing trauma happening to others, and it doesn't necessarily have to be loved ones. That, my friends, is post-traumatic stress disorder in a nutshell. And speaking of young people, with the exception of my 14-year-old who's sitting in the front row there next to my buddy, who's flicking spitballs at me even as we speak, we don't have too many young people in this room. Do you know why? Because the young folks who are in the profession of any branch of first responders, they're not symptomatic. They're not feeling it. There's really no reason for them to be here. They're not feeling it. But someday they're at high risk for feeling it. It creeps up on you from the, whoa.
There goes the green light.
Yeah, there's a green light. Okay. Until somebody digs up a battery, if I yell, can everybody hear me? Beautiful. I got a big mouth, I don't care. So anyway, it creeps up on you from behind. And it's like you start noticing that something's wrong, you don't dare verbalize it, but it starts creeping up on you. And that, my friends, right there is why they call it post-traumatic stress disorder. It's the damnedest thing, because calls that you thought you'd forgotten years prior all of a sudden start surfacing in larger and larger numbers. Right? And as Bob was saying, when you go through one call after another, if it's been a busy day of cardiac arrests, fires, SIDS deaths, God forbid, shootings, etc., you go on one of those kinds of tours of duty, and you get done, and then you're supposed to go home and have dinner with your family and not talk about it, not process it, not say a goddamn thing, right? And that does not help. Believe me. And I'm going to be saying what I'm about to say to you guys on more than one occasion for this evening. What we are doing, what we are advocating, what must happen is to foster discussion. The reason why I am doing this way is I am trying to facilitate disclosure. And John's going to come up and he's going to be telling stories as well as I am. And disclosure breeds disclosure. If one person tells their story, just maybe it gives the next person courage to tell theirs. And we get a dialogue going. And all of a sudden, we get a mass dialogue going. And the big white elephant of post-traumatic stress and not talking about it in the room gets smaller and smaller. How about now? Perfect. Please do not adjust your set. Here we go. So, as I was saying, the idea is to start talking about it, even though we have been trained not to. Hey, Doc, what are you talking about when you say that? I'm glad you asked. As veterans or first responders, we are trained to think of everybody else around us first and ourselves absolutely last. Because that's the stigma. If you're the one who asks for help, you're automatically weak. You are less than manly, or some damn fool thing. And that is the dinosaur thinking we have to leave behind. Otherwise, my friends, the bodies are going to keep piling up. And somebody's pager's going off. Let's hope that's not another one. So, did you ever notice in the retirement announcements for the old chief, there's often a line that we see, a lifetime of service. How many people have seen, you've read that in an obit or something like that? I've seen a few hands going up. Or in a retirement announcement, a lifetime of service. Now on the surface, that sounds pretty good, right? A lifetime of service, that's very motivating. All of a sudden the troops are signing up, pumps my nads, I want to re-enlist. And then I started thinking about that. What does a lifetime of service also mean? Let's look at the darker side. A lifetime of service can also mean a lifetime of trauma. repeated trauma. Now, I'm not talking about something like a 9/11, God forbid. And by the way, I have been fortunate, I've been privileged to know 9/11 responders in my personal life and work with them in my practice. They are extraordinary. But most of the time, it's not a 9/11 responder. It's somebody who has come to me who has been traumatized repeatedly. And my favorite metaphor for this individual is, we hope it doesn't come down to it, but death by 1,000 paper cuts. And it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And so after that lifetime of service and that lifetime of trauma, when it's not verbalized, when it's kept inside, that's when bad things can happen. So, after these repeated horrors, we notice after a while that the old chief is starting to experience recollections of the event, memories that are intrusive, start surfacing without any reason whatsoever. I can't tell you how many folks have come to my practice telling me they recalled a call they went on 5, 10, 20 years prior, and they haven't given it any thought since that time, but the stuff is starting to surface. It needs to be aired out. It needs to be ventilated. And it doesn't necessarily have to be catastrophic calls, just calls in general. The stuff starts to surface, those disturbing recollections, right? And the other thing I'm going to tell you is the old chief, or whoever, is kind of sleep deprived, right? These folks have terrible sleep hygiene because of getting yanked out of the sack at 3 o'clock in the morning to go on a call, and then they have their 9 to 5 day job every day to go to if they're a volunteer firefighter or EMS worker or whomever. And sleep loss, chronic sleep loss, becomes the norm, not the exception. And I'm here to tell you, when you lose enough sleep over a long enough period of time, it aggravates the living bejesus out of anxiety and depression. The job or jobs are extensive, are stressful enough. So it's like we're constantly burning the candle at both ends. We're not putting back into the battery cell the energy that we are squeezing out of it. And that aggravates the hell out of post-traumatic stress. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but part of post-traumatic stress can be a physical manifestation of trauma. In other words, if there's a trigger in the environment, there can be a physical reaction. One of my 9/11 responders told me that he cannot tolerate listening to pass alarms. Now, I know most of you in this room know what a pass alarm is, but we do have a few folks who may not know, so I will briefly define it. A pass alarm goes on a firefighter's air pack, and the pass alarm is supposed to detect motion, all right? When the firefighter is walking around, the pass alarm is quiet. But if the firefighter stands stationary for too long, or God forbid, is on the deck immobilized, that pass alarm starts going off. Psst, 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 psst. We've all heard, or most of us have heard it. And one of my 9/11 guys sent me some footage from the pile of God knows how many pass alarms going off all at once. He said, I can't listen to it because it makes me throw up. That's what I'm telling you about, a physical reaction to trauma. Okay? And the old chief, until he comes to my office or comes to somebody's office or finally spills it to somebody, avoids talking about this stuff like the plague. And it's interesting because we've survived it, right? We've lived through it. So why is talking about it so difficult? And I think I have an answer for that. To feel feelings is a completely different experience from verbalizing those feelings. And oftentimes, the old chief or whomever comes to me and they say talking about it initially is so goddamn difficult because it makes the memory, it makes the trauma, it makes the whatever all the more real. It's an acknowledgement that it actually happened when they finally put words to it. So they avoid that sort of thing to the best of their ability. But once again, the pressure builds. And here's the formula, folks. It doesn't get any simpler than what I'm about to tell you. All right? And I didn't invent this. I'm not that smart. It's above my pay grade. You open your mouth and the pain comes out. I want to make good and goddamn sure that everybody in this room heard what I just said, so I'm going to repeat it. You open your mouth and the pain comes out. I can't make it any simpler than that. And when enough pain is verbalized, is expelled, is relieved, then something called actual thinking can take place. No kidding. And I can't tell you how many times when people come to me, they think talking about it is going to make the situation somehow worse. And they are all pleasantly surprised at the end of session when I ask them, how do you feel? And they think about it for a second, and they all say pretty much the same thing. Doc, they say, I feel strangely relieved. And what was I saying about you open your mouth and the pain comes out? I can't make it any plainer than that, right? So the old chief doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to drive by the place where it happened. He's avoiding it like the plague, which is understandable. Why would you want to talk about something that's painful? I don't understand it. So what eventually happens is when you can finally tell your story, or stories, plural, when you can finally put words to it, when you finally can talk about it, every time you tell your story, it gets easier to tell, which is to say, the power that your story had on you for so long has less and less power as time goes by. You take power back from those memories, from that trauma. You take power back by telling your story. And the other benefit, as I said before, if I tell my story, just maybe it'll free somebody up to tell their story. Let's try to save some lives here, shall we? Anyway. Another thing that happens is cognitively, extreme trauma brings about distortions in memory. All right? Like for instance, when you get two guys like who saw the same fire 10 years prior, they have a very different narrative because they remember the situation very differently, but also because of the internal mechanisms of the mind, certain stuff gets blocked out. And that's why it's so important to get a conversation going with everybody who was involved so they all can remember what they can to piece together whatever it was that happened. Right? Now, let's talk here for a little bit about physiology. And I'm not going to go into it because I don't have MD after my name. Manic depressive, it's an honorary title. No, I'm kidding. Let's talk about brain physiology here for just a second. And an example of this, again, it's going to be another story. I started my career as a diagnostician at a state-run Supermax when I was working out in Kansas. And it's a hell of a first job in psychology, believe me, I'll tell you. You read a guy's rap sheet, right? You interview him for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. You check his psych testing, you suggest programs, type up a report, and send him on his way. So this Vietnam combat vet comes in, and with the combat veterans, I often will ask, who do you miss the most? Right? And normally they're going to tell me about their brother, or God forbid, their sister, who was cut in half in front of them by machine gun fire. And I've also heard a few stories about the pink mist. And you know what that is? It's when blood vaporizes. Right? Gee, Doc, how do we get from first responders to veterans? There's a lot of overlap, folks. And I've heard this from first responders as well. But this story serves the message best. So I asked this guy, this Vietnam vet, who is emotionally ripped to shreds by what he saw. Who do you miss the most? And this guy, God rest him, the color surged to his face. The veins started popping out of his forehead and his neck. He burst into tears and he half shouted, "Doc," he says, "I miss me. I used to be a nice guy." That's worth repeating, folks, so I'm going to. He said, "Doc, I miss me. I used to be a nice guy." And I've heard virtually identical sentences come from the mouths of my first responders who have been at it long enough. Now, the significance of this is, remember I said this has to do with physiology. When the central nervous system, up to and including especially the brain, is exposed to enough trauma, enough adrenaline blasts, enough non-existent sleep, crappy food, et cetera, for prolonged periods of time, the central nervous system changes. The brain changes. The physiology of the brain changes. The biochemistry of the brain changes. So what this guy, this Vietnam vet who gave me this lump of gold 25 years ago that I now pass on to you, he was telling me he went into the service as person A, and he came out the other end of the service as person B. He didn't know who he was anymore. Is it any wonder because of the brain being changed so much? Right? I'm not talking about a personality disorder or anything like that. I'm talking about a shift of personality. Person A becomes person B. And he has, or she has, no idea who they even are anymore. Not just for vets, but for first responders of any denomination who have seen too much. So we might ask this old chief, who's got that dire expression on his face most of the time, what do you do for fun? I mean, you can tell, when you're around somebody who's this dire, the idea of fun, what's fun? And the old chief will eventually realize that the last time he had fun, he can't remember. Because the activities that used to give him pleasure, the stuff he enjoyed, he just doesn't enjoy anymore. The passions he once had, riding motorcycles, gardening, collecting stamps, hiking, whatever, there's just no joy in it anymore. All right? And this next one is a biggie. The old chief, when we see him, or who, or her, or whatever, at a funeral, right? He's in his dress blues, head to toe, putting somebody maybe from his own family. And I've even heard a few examples of putting his own or her own child in the ground, standing there expressionless, like a statue, like a stone, while all the family members are bawling their eyes out. And they're looking at the old chief. It's like, aren't you even human anymore? Why are you so cold? And the old chief is not cold. He's numb, or she is numb. This is the thing, my friends, that fouls marriages out, that destroys relationships with kids. For the old chief, the first responder of whatever denomination, who's just not emotionally present anymore because he or she has seen too goddamn much. Hard to get him to smile, let alone partake in an enjoyable activity anymore. Talk about dehumanization. I had one guy say to me, he said he was grateful for the combat that he saw. Because when he put his mom in the ground, this just happened a couple of years ago, he was grateful because he could put his mom in the ground and not feel a damn thing. And can you think of any worse way to be dehumanized? To have your sense of joy or feeling just stripped from you because of repeated trauma, because of seeing too much, because of hearing too much, etc. I had one guy, one of my Air Force guys, it took him about 6 years of working with me before he was finally able to tell me that the day his only child was born, He's in the delivery room, and the charge nurse hands him his infant daughter. And he said, I hate saying this. He said, I've never said it aloud because it sounds so cold. I didn't feel anything. To this day, I don't feel anything. Can you guys imagine what a terrible way that is to start parenthood or fatherhood? Another guy I know, not a patient, but a guy I know, very quietly told me the effects of combat rendered him emotionally numb to his wife's miscarrying, like two or three times. He felt nothing. Are we starting to have an understanding about this old chief? And the wives of these men, or the husbands of these women, mostly it's men, they don't have any understanding of their husbands. But this, unfortunately, is par for the course. He's not cold. He's numb. And there's a difference between the two. The old chief doesn't really seem to be feeling much of anything. He has a very narrow range of emotions. Kind of matter-of-fact, stolid. But there's one thing this old chief might actually have, and that is one holy hell of a temper. All right? One of the guys I've worked with, who was volunteer firefighter, ski patrol, Army vet for 30 plus years, remarked to me with a terrible tone of voice, he said, my wife and kids just cannot figure out why I'm such a miserable bastard all the time. And that's because of the effects of repeated trauma. And this would be a really good time to say, what I am describing to you guys today, tonight, here, now, is a completely normal reaction. The old chief is reacting completely normally to an unbelievably abnormal set of circumstances. The old chief, and maybe even a lot of people in this room, I don't know. So I'll just say it this way, folks. You're not crazy. He's not crazy. You're not weak. He's not weak. You're just in pain. It's perfectly normal to react as such. You're human, just like the rest of us, just like Ryan was. Another thing we notice about this old chief is when he or she does exhibit a sense of humor, it's a really interesting sense of humor. Dark, twisted, right? EMS has some of the sickest, I love it myself because I'm just as crazy as the rest of you. Thank you all. I've made jokes at my own parents' funerals. Yes, I'm that evil bastard who does that sort of thing. So we ask the old chief, or anybody like him or her, what's with the jokes? What's wrong with you? And the generic response is, well, for us, it's a coping mechanism. I'm sure we've all heard that. A coping mechanism. I've never really cared for that too much because it's kind of vague. It's kind of nebulous. So I started really thinking about that level of humor and what's actually going on. And it finally dawned on me one day. It's a way of screaming. It's a way of screaming. Gee, Doc, where did this come from? I'll tell you. When civilians encounter or are in the middle of a multi-car pileup, when someone is decapitated, when there's blood spurting, when there is a dead baby, when there is a whatever, the first thing that civilian is going to do is open their mouth and they're going to go, oh my God! That's the scream, right? And that, by the way, those screams are, among other things, what stick with the old chief for decades. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with over the years who have heard a mother's scream when they've lost a child. And that sound wakes them up in the middle of the night, repeatedly. But that's what civilians do. It's a perfectly, what was I saying a few minutes ago? Oh yeah, a totally normal reaction to an unbelievably abnormal set of circumstances. But first responders don't have that option. They don't, because they have a job to do. And so they compartmentalize, they absorb all of the trauma of the deceased, of the surviving family members, the anger of the surviving family members because they couldn't resuscitate grandma, etc., or whatever. They can't scream. We can't scream. We've got a job to do. So the coping mechanism of jokes that are quote-unquote inappropriate, that's their way of screaming. I've tried to explain that a few times. Some of the civilians get it, some of them don't. I just pass it on to you guys tonight for what it's worth. Another thing the old chief has a real goddamn hard time with are holidays, Christmas, birthday. And what they'll tell you is, well, Christmas is just another day. The overtime's great. That's what they'll tell you on the surface. But what they might also not be telling you is they were with a family whose mom died on Christmas Day. They were out on the road someplace on Memorial Day during a massive MVA. That's why they choose to work on those days. They work and they work and they work so the memories don't surface. And we'll be getting into coping mechanisms like overwork in just a second. Actually, let me say one more thing about that. The volunteer organizations, they don't pay so well. Gee, you would have thought that's why they call them volunteers, right? And EMS does not pay that especially well. And EMS, those are the folks in many ways I'm most worried about because they have to work so many hours, 3, 4 jobs, in order to make ends meet, and they're away from their wife and their kids and their husband and their kids, or just their kids. Can you see after a while when mom and dad is not there how this can affect family functioning because of being grossly overworked and grossly underpaid? Yes, I think you can. I see it every day. Now, we asked the old chief, should the topic ever come up, about future, what are you going to do when you retire? So many of them have said to me, I don't think I'm going to last that long. I don't think I'm going to live that long. They can't see themselves living into old age. And they say that for actually a very good reason, because of the physical and emotional stress that they have been under for so long. If we happen to have any corrections officers in this room, a lot of those guys, especially in the max facilities where there's a lot of violence, the average age of a corrections officer is 57 when he dies or she dies. And they also tell me you're not a real corrections officer until you've been divorced at least once, maybe twice, and you've got one hell of an alcohol problem. No kidding, folks. And speaking of the law enforcement end of things, I had a hell of a great conversation with a cop a number of years ago who told me, he says, Doc, at the end of the day, I hang up my belt in my locker, I lock my locker, I go home, and the first goddamn thing I don't do is hang out with other cops. And I said, gee, it sounds like you're trying to make a point there. What point are you making? And he says, well, and by the way, this applies to law enforcement, it can apply to corrections, it can apply to any of them. They're great. He said cops are great to serve with. When we're on a call and we're heading in this all in one direction and everybody's doing their job well, same thing for firefighters, any of the first responders. They are incredible to be with because they do their job so well and everybody goes home safe. But when the real dread kicks in is when the all clear is given. And then we have to go back to the firehouse or the precinct or the ambulance bay or whatever. And that's And what I'm about to tell you comes from a firefighter I know from one of the large municipal departments locally with one hell of a pedigree. He said, I hate going back to that goddamn firehouse because when we get done with a call, that's when guys start ripping each other apart. Again. Now, while this may not be, what I'm talking about now, may not be necessarily a life-threatening situation, may not have directly contributed to PTSD, I'm here to tell you guys it aggravates the living hell out of it. I cannot tell you how many stories of teenage angst and misbehaving I have heard about from any branch of the first responders, sleeping with each other's girlfriends, each other's wives, as a way of retaliation. And it's like, are you guys a bunch of high school students with a fucking pickup truck or what? Yeah, I'm getting some laughs here, so I'm hitting some nerves. Good. Because what I'm emphasizing here, I don't want to sound like Father Flanagan here. I don't even look like him for that matter. And if you don't know who Father Flanagan was, look him up when you get home. But the goddamn job is hard enough to do. Why are we making it all the more misery-ridden by going back to the firehouse, drinking to excess, screwing in the back of ambulances, getting nookie in the back of police cars, going to choir practice, shooting up, or whatever the hell it is? What was I saying a few minutes ago about burning the candle on both ends? Hey, I'm smelling a pattern here. It's called negativity. Now, when I'm emphasizing the negativity and toxicity, a toxic work environment, gee, what's that term really mean? It's hanging around and working with a bunch of people you can't stand. And it has nothing to do with their ability as a first responder. It's just they turn it into a complete turd when the all clear is given. And it aggravates an already stressful situation. Can't we all just grow up a little bit? And with these toxic, and yes, I will use the word selfish behaviors, which is really what it all boils down to. The minute we start acting selfishly, aren't we violating the oath we all swore to uphold, to think of the department as a whole and not our own needs? I'll let that one sink in for a while. Right. I forgot to mention a few minutes ago about the whole sleep loss thing, sorry. The old chief, or whomever, often battles nightmares. Repeated nightmares in Technicolor with quadraphonic sound, in utmost digital clarity, night after night. And these aren't just routine nightmares. These are nightmares on steroids times 10 to the 23rd with reasons mixed in. One of my cops told me he was first on scene at a car fire, and a young woman was burning up inside. The car was locked. He was waiting for the fire department / rescue truck to get there. He had nothing he could use to get this woman out. The fire was getting so hot. And the last memory of that call, aside from the car burning up, was screaming. Screaming. And he told me, by the way, we're now talking about triggers. And anything can be a trigger. An odor can be a trigger. A sound can be a trigger. The guy I was telling you about just now, he could be like at a carnival, right? And hearing kids squealing with joy on a Ferris wheel, and all of a sudden, God damn it, he's back at that call, and he has to flee the scene because he can't tolerate it. Right? So let me tell you something else about this old chief. Maybe this applies to a few people in this room. Do you ever notice the old chief when he goes to a restaurant or out in public? Let's stick with the restaurant here for just a moment. That guy or gal has to sit with his back to the wall, constantly looking at the front door, the windows, with his head on a swivel, constantly on patrol. It's a life-saving mechanism that we were all trained to utilize. And I'm not saying it's entirely a bad thing, but the old chief can't turn it off. And is it any wonder that after a while, going out in public is not fun for the old chief? This guy or gal avoids public places like the goddamn plague and only goes out to them when he's on a call or she's on a call. And part of this, and by the way, we're talking about hypervigilance. The old chief is constantly on the lookout for the next disaster. It's the way he was trained, and it's a great survival mechanism. I'm not trying to take away from it, but if we pause for a moment and consider how much mental and emotional energy does it cost us to have our head constantly on a swivel, anticipating disasters, trying to be prepared for something that may never come. It's a huge expenditure of energy, and it's exhausting. Now, almost done here. I would like to say something about females in the world of first responders. I've been privileged to know a couple of them who have 20, 30-year pedigrees as firefighters, medics, EMTs, and whatnot. And I asked one of them a number of years ago if there's one thing you wish people would know about female first responders of any denomination, what would it be? And she said that we're not a joke. That we are not a joke. These women who are competent, have passed all the same tests that the men have had to pass, have to work twice or even 3 times as hard to get the same level of respect. I'm not saying it happens all the time, every day, but it still happens with appalling regularity. Women are still treated like objects. You know, when I was saying about negativity a few minutes ago, while it doesn't cause PTSD, it's yet another thing that aggravates the hell out of it. We have to treat each other better, regardless of plumbing. Now, as far as what I have seen for what first responders are doing about mental health issues, it's a cliche that makes my stomach turn, and it's called an open door policy. Anybody ever heard of this one? Open door policy? See a few show of hands. Okay, all right, good. Nobody wants to. I don't want to raise. Don't call on me, Doc. No, I'm not going to. It sounds good, doesn't it? Well, we have an open door policy around here. Hunky goddamn dory. What these people are afraid of, if they take advantage of that open door policy, is that they go in, they spill their guts, and all of a sudden they find themselves transferred or given shitty assignments or ostracized or just plain shunned out of the department altogether. This kind of mentality, this kind of anti-mental health stigma, brothers and sisters, my friends, has got to stop. Remember I said at the beginning of this, we are killing ourselves. It's because of this mentality. A lot of years ago, I had a conversation with one of the, shall we say, dinosaurs of the profession. And this guy, I mentioned in passing, I had a very brief, lackluster tour as a volunteer firefighter and EMT. That seemed to get his attention. He goes, well, what's your day job? And I said, I'm a psychologist. And I know that facial expression. Like, oh shit, I'm not manly enough for this person. So anyway, I see this dinosaur mentality quite often still. So I asked him, what are you doing about mental health in your department? And this guy actually said to me, well, you see, we don't really talk about that sort of thing around here, you understand? And I looked at this Precambrian life form, and I said to him, really? Is that why your 3 wives, your ex-wives, won't talk to you anymore? Is that why you haven't had a conversation with your kids? Is that why 2 of them are drunks just like you? You don't like hearing that too much. And it's one of these moments. I'm so grateful for being 6.5 feet tall. What's he going to do? Stand on a chair? I don't think so. Jesus. Now, here's the maddening thing about one of these dinosaurs. These guys may be absolute geniuses on fire scenes, medical calls, in the precinct, on a crime scene. But when they have this kind of attitude toward mental health and they're not seeing to the men and women in the department and their emotional well-being, I got a problem with that. This guy went on to say to me with tones of defiance that one of his men committed suicide, and then the guy looked at me and said, and I quote, "Doc, he was just plain weak." And I looked at this fossil and I said, "Congratulations, Chief, for being part of the problem and not the solution." Remember I was saying stigma a few minutes ago? Who's going to talk to a fossil like that? Not too many. He comes from the generation of not talking about it, drinking it away, sleeping around, etc., etc. This is supposed to be heroism? I don't think so. Right? I'm going to just tell you two more things briefly. So the old chief starts his career in whatever, and he answers call after call, witnesses fatality after fatality, hears scream after scream, comes into physical contact with one dead body after another. And it builds, and it builds, and it builds. He keeps it inside. This old chief, maybe some of the people in this room, I've done it too, figure, okay, the first thing I'm feeling like shit, so I don't want to be that guy and ask for help. I'm not working hard enough, so I got to work more. That's right, I got to work more. 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week. And that doesn't make the problem go away. And he figures, well, I think I'm going to go and instead of one beer, I'm going to have 5. You see where this is going? It ain't pretty. He starts avoiding, he starts drinking, drugs, whatever. And the pressure continues to build and build and build. Maybe this old chief, maybe he makes it to retirement, right? 30 years in, he gets his retirement watch. He paints on a smile at his retirement party. Lifetime of service. He paints on a smile, but he's not feeling much of anything. Because the job has come to be the only thing that has held this poor bastard together. And he goes home to no wife, no kids. He's at higher and higher risk. And you see where this is going. Higher and higher risk until one day the pain is so severe that he can't think of life. He can't even visualize life without pain, without agony, without suffering. And so this old chief usually goes to his gun closet, grabs the weapon of choice, and he's been thinking about it for a long time. And he puts that bullet in his mouth. And he's gone. He's gone. And as I have said now 3 times, and I will say it again, friends, this all could have been avoided if he just opened his goddamn mouth and said something. I acknowledge that picking up the phone and asking for help from this old chief or anybody who comes to see me in my practice or in my personal life, asking for help is the hardest goddamn thing they've ever done in their life. I honor that struggle. I acknowledge that struggle, the meaning of that. And when they are finally able to tell me about those terrible calls that they haven't given voice to in decades, I am well aware that what they are giving me is tantamount to them giving me a piece of their soul. It's essential for recovery. It's essential. Mental health is essential, not just for survival in the most basic sense that I'm talking about. Let's extend the shelf lives of our best people by actually advocating for mental health, by leading from the front, by saying, listen, you guys all know me or whatever, I've been in this department 20 years. I asked for help and it was the best thing I ever did. Just because you're fully diagnosable with post-traumatic stress does not mean that you can't do the job. Hell no, it doesn't turn you into a veg case. It doesn't define your life unless you let it. But life gets so much easier when you finally warm yourself up to the idea that asking for help actually, shocker, makes you stronger. And to anybody who might be thinking otherwise, I put it to you this way. There's absolutely no difference between asking for help on a fire scene when we get that god-awful Mayday, Mayday, Mayday that makes everybody's blood run cold, or on a medical scene, or on a crime scene. There is no difference between asking for help as such or asking for help for one's mental health. And I will argue that point until I can no longer breathe. I hope I am making myself abundantly clear. No shit. How many people in this room have seen the thin red line, blue line, green line, yellow line, those flags that we all have, right? I've got one in my office. It's made of wood. I fly it proudly. The thin red line, the thin colored lines. Listen up, you guys. I'm going to tell you right here, right now, why this is so important to me. Those thin colored lines are getting thinner by the day. By the day. Nobody wants to do these jobs anymore. Because of administrative policies, because of public attitudes, because there isn't enough money. They're working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Nobody wants to do these jobs anymore. And by the way, that would also include the thin green line of the military. Enrollments in the military now are dangerously low. They are paying, our government is paying people stupid amounts of money to join up because nobody wants to do the job anymore. And just maybe the young people have seen the mental health struggle that goes into these jobs, how they are treated or how they could be treated, and they say, no thanks, I don't think so. That's not for me anymore. And it's a damn shame. Right? One more story, and I'll shut up. And again, this is going to be a veteran, but it could just as easily have been a first responder. Right? So I'm at my in-laws' church, Christmas Eve, 2006, I believe it was. And my phone goes off in my pocket. And it's one of my recon Marines. And if anybody doesn't know what reconnaissance or recon Marine is, it's kind of like Special Forces, the Marine Corps' version of Special Forces. This guy had himself one hell of an academic pedigree, or a battle pedigree. This guy was incredible. TBI, Purple Heart, the whole thing. And the phone goes off in my pocket, and he and his wife and their 6 kids, I want you to keep that number in mind, 6 kids, were on their way up from North Carolina to visit his in-laws living someplace in Pennsylvania, and they were snowbound. The van starts overheating, and being the self-sufficient jarhead that he is, he pulls off the side of the road, pops the hood, tries to fix it himself, jiggles the radiator cap to let out the steam, catches a whiff of antifreeze, and boom, he's back in Iraq. Now, odors being triggers. What was I saying about that? Well, here it is again. So that led, according to what he told me, to adrenaline blasts that lasted for hours. He was doing calisthenics. He was running in place. He was climbing trees. Anything to shake it. This was a psychotic episode, my friends. He was literally back in Iraq. And so by the time he got to me on the phone, his wife and their 6 kids were across the street someplace, wondering if Daddy was going to be alive when they came out because he had a phone in one hand talking to me and a gun in the other. So, all I did was just listen to him. Every number, by the way, that he tried went to voicemail. The guys he served with, commanding officer, anybody, it all went to voicemail. And why? Because it's Christmas Eve. Nobody's answering their phone. I just so happened to be there. I answered my phone. And this whole thing took place like within the space of 20 to 25 minutes. All I did was listen and just let him get it out. Let him get it out. Let him get it out. In plainer English, de-escalate, 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 de-escalate. Finally, after about 20, 25 minutes, I could hear in his voice. And by the way, I had never spoken with him before on the phone. I just met him on a website, exchanged messages with him. I could hear in his voice that he was a lot calmer, and I said, listen, man, are you safe? And he said with that magnificent North Carolina drawl of his, he said, yeah, Doc, I'm safe. And I said, no, fucker, listen, are you fucking safe? Yeah, Doc, I'm safe. And I said, okay, I'm gonna have to trust you. But at the end of these services, I'm gonna text you. And I better get a fucking text back within 5 minutes or less. Or I will call 911 down on your ship. None of this bullshit on my watch. Get it? Yes, sir. And at the end of service, I texted him. He texted back. I checked on him throughout the week. So that was 2006. 2014, my wife and I and our two kids, one of them is sitting right here in the front row, flicking spitballs at me. We went down through North Carolina on the way to South Carolina to vacation. We paid the man a visit. So we pull into his driveway, and he swings the front hatchway open. He doesn't even say hello, he just bear hugs me. And he invites me and my wife and my two kids into his home to meet for the first time in person his wife and their 10 kids. I am not making this up. We started with 6, now we got 10. We got a goddamn football squad here. They've been busy. I tell them about birth control, they don't listen, in one ear and out the rubber. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Don't forget to tip your waitress. The veal piccata is wonderful. So he calls the 4 little ones, and they're all boys. You, and you, front and center. And these 4 little boys present themselves at the position of parade guest. And he said to me, so Doc, not only did y'all save my life that night, you saved yours as well. And the next punchline to this story is, he's still alive and he became a grandfather for the first time last year. True story. Now, why did I tell you this? Did I tell you this to illustrate what a wonderful human being I am? What a sick... No. Bullshit. I just happen to be the guy who picked up the phone. That's it, that's all, no more. End of story. There ain't no goddamn mystery here. It could have just as easily have gone in the toilet. He could have just as easily been a statistic. I just so happened to be there. And so in parting, my friends, I can't tell you how many of folks just such as yourselves have come up to me and said something along the lines of, when they come and they want to talk to me, I never know what to do. I never know what to say. Right? And I'll tell this person, and I'll tell anybody in this room the same thing. The person who is coming to you already knows what your skill set is. Chances are fairly pregnant. They're not going to ask you to do anything. And as far as I never know what to say, here's the secret of the universe, kiddies. You don't have to say that much. Just listen. Just listen. Turn your goddamn phones over and off. And just listen to this person. Listen. Be emotionally present. Be full. Be unafraid. Be with them. Witness them. Let them in. Let them impact you. I see in this room quite a few firefighters. I see moms, I see grandpas, I see a kid or two. Brothers, sisters, wives, aunts, uncles. But I also see something else in this room. I see a force multiplier. A force multiplier. I can't be the only guy in the face of the earth who does this shit, and I know good and goddamn well I'm not. And no, you don't have to have a bunch of letters after your name or be a psychologist to do this. All you have to do is listen. If you're really worried that the person is about to do themselves in, do the deed, dial 911. Guess what? I've had to do it. Most of the time, the overwhelming majority of the time, that's not necessary. Just listen to them. And so, force multipliers, let us start today, this day, going forward. Let's start saving a few lives. Let's start saving more lives. Let's spread it. Let's spread this gospel that I'm attempting to preach to you tonight. I am sick and tired of peeling open a newspaper or hearing from somebody that there's been another death. And I would imagine everybody in this room is sick and tired of hearing about it too. And we can all do something about it, starting now. Who's with me? Peace out.
So as we transition to John Cooney, feel free to get up, get outside, grab some snacks, grab some water, and we'll get John going as soon as we can here, okay? So we can get you out of here. Hey, come on, boy. Come on. Seth, how are you? Go ahead. Oh, sir. How are you? Stay here. Yep.
What's up, buddy? That's awesome, pal. Thank you very much. That's awesome.
retired. No, he retired. Oh, he was a great guy. He's at the major's office. I was never introduced him. Matter of fact, I got fired twice. You realize nobody else could go to one.
All right, come on, Cooney. Step two, right there. No?
See, I want it any thicker. There. I'm all good to go.
Yeah.
I gotta put it down. All right, I know that the snacks are going to be much more enjoyable than what you probably hear from me, so I get that. But bring them in with you.
Bring him in with you. You can. I don't think we're gonna yell at you if you eat in your tour auditorium today. The chief just gave me the thumbs up. So. All right, so Leah, let's move along. My name is John Cooney, and I.
Folks, listen up.
What?
I got him.
Okay, here we go. Wireless has to be wireless for me. Before we start, as Doc did, he made a brief dedication in his presentation, and I do so also. Eric Smith I hired Eric Smith, and I've only told 2 officers, as I hired 43 in my tenure as human resources. I've only told 2 of them that they will be chiefs someday. And I wasn't being nasty or anything, but sometimes you know, sometimes you really know. And Eric Smith was the guy. He was definitely going to be chief someday, and Eric did meet with unfortunate circumstances in 2021. The other gentleman I told actually turned out to be Eric's best friend, who is one of my most respected and loved chiefs, Stephen Barker, our assistant chief now at Troy PD, by the way. So again, I dedicate this to Eric. He has left us, and it's been tough, and I know he's joining the 2 of us on the stage right now. I really do feel that. I'm going to just give you a brief rundown of why I think the chief asked me to come here today. I do get to speak a lot. I get to take some pretty nice trips all over the country and share. But most importantly, I guess after, especially listening to Doc, I do fulfill a few qualifications to have some pretty serious issues going through my careers. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force. I left a military high school, LaSalle. We probably beat Mechanicville at a few things over the years, I hope. And got my Hudson Valley degree, which we all do in Rensselaer County because it's a great school. But anyway, and then it was the military. And that's where it all started in so many good ways, but in not all the best ways. And I'll keep this short, but going to a military high school, that's why I mentioned LaSalle, you get to enter the military with rank. Oh my God, it's your first day, you're sworn in, and you're an E3, which is two above the rank of airman. That's great. Until I got to basic training, and my battalion was 162, including myself, and there was only 1 airman first class in the battalion. That happened to be me. So 161 to 1, yeah, it was a little bit too much to deal with. And I thought I handled it well. The first thing they asked me on the first day is, do you want your head shaved? And I was an E3, so I didn't have to have my head shaved. Basic training, first day, you know I got my head shaved. I asked him to double shave it because I needed to try to get over what I already saw was going to be a difficult task. And that worked well, but nothing else went too well. Basic training for me, the first stone that I threw at my fellow airmen is that I got out in half the time. Because I knew how to march, I knew how to give orders, commands, and all that. So that didn't go over well with the 161 others. And it got worse, and what basic training turned into me is a 5.5-week nightmare. Inspections, hospital corners, they gotta be tight on your bed, you gotta have your pillow in the perfect spot, your locker, everything has to be an inch this way, inch that way. Well, my fellow airmen, God bless them all, but they made sure that whatever it took to get me not to go on, they did. And my hospital corners were untucked for surprise inspections. My locker was literally messed with to the point where on an almost daily basis for 5.5 weeks, I got ripped to pieces by my drill sergeant. And it was a tough road to hoe, but I did it. And I think one of the reasons I'm here tonight is when it was all over, my drill sergeant, I'm 5.5 weeks out, everybody else is there for another 5.5. He told me that he knew. He told me that he knew that each and every day somebody was effing with my stuff. But he told me he had to make sure that I was held accountable and that they didn't know that he knew. And you want to talk about maybe the onset of trauma early in your life? Wow. I mean, for 5.5 weeks, I got ripped to pieces every day. And I never wanted to tell my sergeant, but it's them. It's not me. It was them, but it was me too. So maybe that's where it all started as far as getting a grip on the fact that the human mind is subject to, at times, a little bit of stress. Moving from out of the Air Force into the police department, I have a career that I'm very proud of. I joined the Detroit Police Department in 1983. By 1986, I had what we commonly referred to in police circles as shoot, don't shoot. I didn't shoot. I believe to this day it was the right decision, but it's a long story, but the bottom line is that when I was down on one knee, we had revolvers back then, believe it or not, down on one knee, ready to pull back, and I did pull back about halfway probably, at a man charging at me with a butcher knife saying, "I'm going to kill you, pig." I guess I shot, and I believed I shot. And I saw the man with the knife get tackled and cuffed and dragged away intact while I saw my partner bleeding out on the floor. Again, just like everything, the human mind just registers things in whatever way. And sometimes if it hits you hard in one way, it just stays that way. And it stayed that way. I shot my partner. I knew I shot my partner. Then they put me out in a courtyard. It was a public housing, and there wasn't issues with race or anything like that with the police back then. Everybody just kind of hated us for a lot of different reasons. So I sat on a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket and cried while 30 to 40 people marched around me telling me that they wanted me to die. I guess I got through that okay. Sure I did. It turned out I didn't fire. Now that's a long story, deeply seated with all my psychological treatment that I've had, psychiatric. But the deep-seated secret was I didn't shoot. To this day, I smell the gunpowder. I see the flash. I see Steve go down and bleed, and I shot my partner, Steve Homans, but I didn't shoot. What the hell is going on here? So that was confusing, because obviously within 10 minutes of the shooting, no shooting, I was advised, especially with revolvers, it was real easy, you know. The sergeant took all of a minute to tell me, "You've never fired your gun, all your rounds are fresh." I guess I was okay. But it was okay now to maybe not feel like coming to work as much. It is okay now to call in sick, probably about half the time I should be there. And I never wanted to call in sick. But the bottom line is when I got done at work at 8 in the morning, I was only going to drink till noon and then sleep it off and go back to work sober. By 6 o'clock p.m., I realized I was so drunk I better not go to work. And if there's one thing that worked well is I never, ever went to work with a drop of alcohol in my blood. But I called in sick every stupid day because of it. But I was still okay, right? I was okay. And then I had a partner on the job who was also my roommate in our bachelor pad. And he started wondering what was going on when I'd wake up screaming at night. When I'd wake up punching walls. And then he never knew, thank goodness, that I was usually getting out of bed and sleeping on the couch because I wet my bed during my night terrors. But this was all because I didn't shoot my partner. It took a toll. It took a toll really quick. When I did go to work, I didn't go on calls. If it was a gun call, I lied. I said I was out of gas. Well, I didn't say I was out of gas. Take that back. I said I was tied up. I said I was doing a report. I said I was in the men's room. But I wouldn't go to a gun call. I wouldn't go to domestic because that's what had rooted this whole incident. It was a domestic incident. I finally got caught. I said I'm out of gas, which in our department at that time was a 1-week rip. You lose a week's vacation right off the bat because you have to fill it before you go out. I took the week, I thought, but I also didn't expect my good friend to come up with a gas can and try to fill my car with 5 gallons so I could move. And I resisted to the point where I almost got physical with him because I didn't want him to pour that gas into my car. Why? Because the gas was probably going to just go all over the ground because my tank was full. That's when it got bad. So, I'm trying to move on quick. I lost the respect of every single human being in the world that wore a badge. We had an employee's parking lot at Troy PD behind an old labor hall there. They towed my car one night out of the parking lot while I was working. And I heard my plate come over the air because I wasn't. What did I know? Oh my God. Oh, I was a POS cop. That's what I was. And that's what they told me. And that turned into a fight in a parking lot because the officer towed my car. I was a tough guy. You weren't going to tow my car. You're busting my you-know-whats, and I'm not going to accept it. So we got into a fight in a parking lot, and my supervisor came to me that night and said, and remember, no cell phones back then, here is my home phone. You call me tomorrow. You either tell me you've done something to get this worked out, or I will be serving you with your suspension tomorrow afternoon. So, needless to say, my glorious career as a police officer, I was 3 years in and was on the verge of getting fired. I'll move along from then and tell you that I called EAP. But we don't call EAP because the city of Troy paid for EAP. So they know every single person who calls because of the EAP. People always tell the city. Oh, by the way, John Cooney calls. He's got some serious issues. We're going to talk to him. Sure, the city gets that call all the time. And I beg of you, if somebody tells you that, if somebody goes there with you, you ask them, you look them right in the face and say, oh, how do you know? Oh, you must have called EAP and got blown into the city. Oh, no, not me. No, I won't call EAP. What do you know? I just heard. And that's all it was, is about what they just heard. So I put my faith in the system. I spent 4 months and had a secret existence, so to speak, for 4 months. I was diagnosed initially with depression, major depressive disorder. I think they called it something back then, something else. And that turned into PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder with high risk of suicide. That's what it said right on the paperwork. I think the good news is suicide, thankfully, wasn't part of my mindset. But night terrors, peeing in my bed, punching out walls, moving out of my apartment with my friend because I couldn't be close to a friend anymore. My life changed that year, and I got through it. I got through it, making sure when I first parked my car, trying to move along. This is just so important. You see these ways we try to just deal with this stuff that is, to be frank, it's easier to deal with than you'll ever know, but it will never seem easy. I parked my car in a psychiatrist's office on Hoosick Street in Troy. Oh my God, they're going to see my car. So I moved down 4 blocks into pretty much our drug-infested area in Troy, even back then, and I parked there and walked up. And I got back to my car, and there's a note from the guys, because we didn't have phones, remember? No cell phones back then. John, are you okay? Why is your car parked here? Oh, my God. God bless them. They saw my car parked in a drug-infested neighborhood. This is really getting good. I had to work my way through that, so I will tell you, to end this part of it, Brattleboro, Vermont became my solace. It became my life. It was an outpatient program. 3 days a week, I drove 1 hour and 40 minutes to Brattleboro, Vermont, so that nobody would know. But to be frank, it was the best place in the world for me to go at the time. I drive an hour and 40 minutes, say hi to my psychiatrist. I'm calling a psychiatrist. And the first thing she asked me, John, how are you? How was your drive? Good, Sue. Her name was Sue. She loved to call her Sue. Good, Sue. Well, I need to know, have you have any thoughts of suicide in the last 2 days since we last saw each other? And again, suicide wasn't part of it. It's just the chaos, the distrust, the questioning of your now mind, questioning my own ability as a cop. Do I belong out there? Is this all supposed to go the way towards termination? So I fought through it, folks. I got through it. And the department, my supervisor at the time, shall remain nameless, worked with me and kept me off the books for 4 months, and nobody really kind of knew, or to be frank, nobody cared. They were probably all glad I wasn't showing up anymore. I'm going to say I'm recovered, but I know I'm actually still in recovery. I got on a heavy course of antidepressant medications. I cursed them, but I took them as I cursed them every day. I'm, we're talking about 1986, so whatever the number is, I'm here today still taking my medication every day. And you know what? It's free. I think it makes me feel great, but I don't think it really makes me feel anything. But why the heck do you stop if you don't have to? Just stay on it, because life is good, and life was great. Very proud of my career. It all went well. I retired very proud. And again, I'm trying to move forward, so I'm a little bit out of touch with my PowerPoint here, and I'm not going to really get into too much on the PowerPoint, but this is something I just kind of usually count on over the years I have. So upon retirement, I got the opportunity to get involved with the Mental Health Association in New York State. I got the opportunity to be a consultant and a speaker with them. I've had the opportunity to travel all over the country. Seattle, Washington is a really big mental health place. I don't know why, but I get to go and stand in the rain in Seattle. I get wet every time I go. It really does rain in Seattle. I don't care what that movie said. Let me just see what I got here. Chief, get me going on this PowerPoint, please. Sorry. Thank you, sir. I'm going to just touch on some of my notes without even the PowerPoint being there. I will tell you, when you suffer from something like post-traumatic stress disorder, you will not tell anyone. But damn it, you will talk to, meet with, and tell your EAP, your psychological help, your psychiatrist. You will talk about it. And you will love every minute of talking about it. I'm a talker. I don't swear as much as the chief said when I'm on stage with people in front of me. But, my goodness, law enforcement. I don't hang out with cops. Because cops just, everything's so negative and negative and negative, because the world sucks and our job is to go out and make it not suck. So you know what? We're really mad at the world. Because I can't believe they make us do this. Oh, the other clicker. What do I probably had my clicker. Is that what I did? Okay. I did that on purpose just to get you guys. Make it happen. Again.
The door just opened.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not going to swear. That's it. All right, so here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the fact that, first of all, my best friend is a fireman. My best friend in the world is my brother. He's a fireman. He's a golfer. He beats me on a regular basis because he was a fireman and he had 5 days a week to play golf. I mean, come on, man. But he does. He beats me on a regular basis. I love him to death. He knows of my struggles. He knows of my struggles only till recently, only from recently, though. I will tell you, we're talking about this whole thing, about the stress and what comes from this job and post-traumatic stress. I kept it a secret for 29 or 30 years. I was trying to do the numbers on the way up. I don't know. I kept it a secret. I married the most beautiful angel in the world. I raised the most two beautiful children in the world. We lost a child, and it sucked. we got through it. And now I have the most 3 beautiful grandchildren in the world. But I kept it a secret from everyone, and I'm ashamed, and someday Doc and I hope we'll talk about this. My shame level is off the charts because I didn't tell anybody. And to marry someone, to marry her on June 11th, 1988, and not tell her what was going on was a sin, and I will forever feel guilt for that. But you know what? The day I told my family, starting with my wife, of course, I was free. I was free from this horrific secret that my wife had every right in the world to know from the first freaking day I met her. But no, I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anyone. No one at the job knew. My retirement led to my disclosure, which led to what is now pretty much my life. I will speak to anyone and everyone in the world about what this thing is up inside their skull. It's really wild. It's beautiful. It's crazy. It makes you. It's the most amazing machine. One of my slides, if I have the right one now, we'll see if we got this right. I don't know. I can turn it on, maybe. Yep. Yeah, sure. There you go. My apologies, folks. Again. This is the machine that we have in our heads, and it's amazing. But it doesn't always run well. So if this thing in your head is an engine of just so much, it's spectacular. Why the heck is it not okay that it needs a tune-up once in a while? Why the heck it is not okay that it needs an oil change? But we don't, because we're cops and we're firemen and we're fighters, we're soldiers. We don't let that happen. And I'm telling you right now, folks, we do not let that happen. Firemen. In 2006, there was an honest school shooting. West Nickel Mines in Pennsylvania. In 2006, and it was just a senseless shooting. 5 young students, all young girls between like 6 and 12 were killed. Garden Spot Fire Department from Pennsylvania was one of the first responding departments on the scene. That was 2006. In 2020, a member of Garden Spot took their own lives based on what happened on that scene. They called my contact I have in Pennsylvania. I wasn't going to drive 6 hours in one day with no notice. 8 hours later, I was there. We debriefed. We met. I went to hang out with volunteer firefighters for a day and a half. I spent 5 days there. I had breakfast with them every morning. I know what you see. I know what you feel. And I do. You say, well, who are you? You don't know how I feel. I absolutely know how you feel. And I know there's times when you're going to go home and you're going to say, damn it, I want to cry, but I ain't going to cry. I don't cry. I love to cry. I cry more than I swear. I love to cry. And again, there's times, as my colleague will tell you, there's probably times that are unhealthy moments for crying. But I find it to be extremely therapeutic. And if one of the things you come out of this tonight with is you go home and tomorrow or next week or next month you feel like crap, let yourself cry. Maybe you're going to do it alone down in the basement. And that is my alarm. Thank you. You can just push a button or something. Thank you, Chief. I want to keep us on schedule here. Crying is something I heartily recommend at the right time and place for you. Again, I got to move ahead here. I'm going to preach to you now. What right do I have to preach to you? My name is John, and I'm an alcoholic. That's tough to say. I almost teared up there. Don't say it too much. Many of you here will appropriately and needily, if there's such a word, find it's a really good time to have a couple beers. And there's plenty of times that are really good times to have a couple beers. And I'm not here to preach, folks. But I'm begging you just to remember that 5 nights, 6 nights a week, even a couple beers, that's okay. But boy, when you get to where this guy was, and it's 6, 7 beers, 6 nights a week, and you know, I only say 6 nights a week because the 7th night was probably 10 beers. It was a nightmare, and nobody could talk me out of it. Nobody tried to talk me out of it. My wife's family had alcohol concerns, and I think my wife grew up knowing that it's out there, and she also saw what I did and heard and felt every day. So, to her credit, she supported me as much as she could. But finally, that day came when she said, "You're done," and it took me. Believe me, when you want to stop drinking, especially tall cans of chelada, you find some great places in your house to hide those cans. You really do. My goodness, I thought, wow. I worry once in a while that I'm going to find one from 3 years ago. My wife's going to think it was, last night. That would not go over well. Alcohol was my crutch. It worked. And the day came when my doctor finally said, at 62 years old, she said, something's going on. When she did simple palpitations, not even whatever you would call them, not even tests. She didn't look at my blood, she didn't look at everything. She said, "John," she goes, "something's going on. Your liver, what's going on with your liver? What's going on with you?" I don't know, Doc, I'll go home and have a 6-pack and then maybe call you and tell you about it. I mean, that's how bad it was. And I love to death people that I spend time with throughout my entire career, and now, unfortunately, golf and alcohol do mix very well. I don't preach. I don't get on them about it. I just take care of them. I take them home. I let them. It's just a matter of caretaking for me because I've been there, done that. But so yeah, there's another benefit of my 31-year career in law enforcement. Alcoholism. It's going on. If I took you to a 100-man department and there was 32 people working a shift, I guarantee you 2 or 3 would be at work under the influence of alcohol. Yeah, that's right. So I know this is public, and I know some cops are going to say, "Who the hell is he to say that we drink, especially when we're going to work?" Deal with it, folks. We do. We do. And it's understandable. It's a crutch, but you know what? It's a crutch. It works. It gets you through. It helps you. It gives you that support. But why not heal and rather need a crutch? I'm going to give you just. I'm almost out of time, but I'm going to give you some quick things I'd like to ask you to think about making part of your life. What you do with your alcohol, what you do with, first of all, I will say, what you do with EAP or some type of referral you have for your own mental health because of this crazy job and crazy life that we've all chosen, do it. Trust EAP. Because if you're thinking of calling them, then something's wrong. So will you just call them and talk to a stranger on a phone? That's what I did. But within 2 days, I went to see my doctor to get screened for something. I don't know what. My EAP coordinator stood up with me, got me. Somebody I befriended, actually, so it was a very comfortable situation. But I will tell you, in your first stages, if you look at your own well-being and decide where you need to go next, you can do it. Eventually, you'll be doing it with Doc. Or maybe not. But you will do it through your family doctor. You will take screenings, you will take tests, you will do whatever it takes. But when you're sitting in your family doctor's office, as I did, and God forbid, I almost passed out, somebody from work walks in. Coon, what's going on? Not a very friendly reception, because I already made the point that people pretty much couldn't stand me by then. But I hurt my foot. And that's exactly what Bob told me to say if it happened. And it happened. So I hurt my foot. So my point of letting you know is that to go to your family doctor for the first steps in getting screened for some type of mental health concerns, it does happen that way. And God forbid if they put you on an antidepressant, you'll try 3 or 4 over the next 5 months, 3 months, and something is going to make you feel just that tiny bit better every day. It's not going to make you high. It's not going to make you weird. It's going to make you you. Because I wasn't me. And it wasn't Prozac, and it wasn't, I forget the course of medications, but it was a medication called Wellbutrin. And it, I believe today, as did my supervisor for making me call, as did my EAP program for basically making me see my doctor, and my doctor for putting me on these medications. I'm not going to say meds saved my life, but I can say that the life that I have is a life that I love to death. I love to death. Here's another one. I'm just letting things pop into my head here. You want to make yourself feel better tomorrow? Go to the supermarket, untie your shoe, and walk around for 20 minutes. And I guarantee you someone is going to come up to you and they're going to be very hesitant, embarrassed. Jesus, I'm so sorry to bother you, sir. But I'm really, your shoes untied, you're going to fall. And now, you have 2 options. I know the chief heard this. You have 2 options. Say, I know, I leave it untied on purpose because I like to have my shoes untied. Or you can say, oh my goodness, thank you so much. You just probably saved me from falling down and breaking my skull. I can't thank you enough. I'm going to tie it right now. What did you just do for yourself? Well, you say not much. What did you do for that person? Especially if it's an elder. Oh my God. When a 65, 75, 80-year-old person tells you your shoe's untied and you tell them thank you so much, you've made me safe. They are over the top. But you know what? When you walk out, you're going to be over the top. You're going to say, for all the crazy things and all the lousy shit I feel when I work, or when I recreate, whatever, like lose at golf, which I do all the time, you're going to say, that was pretty cool. I feel great. Now, I also bring back carts. I help people unload carts. I just do it to do it. And you got to be careful with that stuff these days, especially. I've even gone as far as, hi, I'm a retired police officer. I don't want you to be nervous, but I was wondering if you'd like some help bringing stuff. It just whatever it made them feel by me bringing their cart was probably nothing. But when I brought their cart up and put it away and they got in their car and left, I felt like $1,000,000. So please, take care of yourself in that regard. Please, acts of kindness are so big a deal. Here's a survival tactic for you in this service that you do. When I was new on a job, and there was a call and it involved someone who's deceased, I had to stand, and we were pretty good in Troy. You actually had to sign in to, especially if it was a crime scene, you had to be signed in. But there was a line to sign in to go see a dead body. Because we were new, we were good, we were cops, you had to see dead bodies. I was a detective, it wasn't even going to be my case. I do special victims, it was a homicide. But I gotta see the body, it's a body, you gotta see it, it's cool, it's awesome. Get off that track, please. If you don't need to go and see, don't do it. Why expose yourself to that trauma when you have no need in any way, shape, or form? Some of the biggest homicides in the city of Troy, even as a detective captain, I am still void of having the image still in my mind of whatever I would have seen if I took it upon myself to believe it was important for me to go into that crime scene and see that body. I didn't need to see it, and I didn't see it. And you know what? It's a really good decision. I'm just passing that on. It's kind of like cool to see it, but then you realize 20 years later, why the heck did I do that? It was just ridiculous. I'm going to tell you also, in our line of work, in your line of work, I'm not even going to get into the fact that we know that domestically it brings us problems. I will tell you that with police officers, Domestic violence is very much a part of our lives. I'm not going to say it for you guys because I just don't know enough about what you do or how you do it. I do know that when my daughter's smoke alarm went off about a year ago, and it was a battery issue, I had 18 volunteer firefighters from the Wyansville Fire Department show up at her house. 18 for a call, which I'm sure was answerable. You guys probably got an alarm. That's probably good timing. How cool is that, though? I love you guys. I just love you guys so much. I'll never be a volunteer firefighter, though. Let's get right off that right now. I play too much golf with Gary, and I see too much with him. Last thing, a couple real last things here. I know it's time. I want to try to leave you with some really thoughtful messages. The best message is you didn't have to see my PowerPoint. That's probably pretty good. Maybe I'll get on Facebook some night and let y'all know what we're doing. What I do need to say to you all is that your job requires you to use your physical strength, in some ways your mental toughness, in some ways your ability to interact, and I mean with EMS, I know that's probably a big part of the job is really knowing how to talk, how to interact with someone that you're taking care of. But I will tell you that for all the work you do to help everyone else, because that's all you do, you help everyone, you do not help yourself anywhere much as you need to. My life is the best life that any human being could ever ask for. I am the happiest human being you will ever meet. I don't have bad days. And when I do, what do? I cry. Oh my God, my wife just says, just go in and cry for a while, you'll be fine. She knows. She says it in jest, but she's right. You are heroes to the public. You are heroes to yourselves. But you are not in any way, shape, or form a hero that is not deserving of self-care and self-awareness. You need to protect this thing inside your skull. And you're not going to be able to. Many of you are not going to be able to. Some of you are. God bless you. I wish you nothing but the best. But so many of you are going to hurt. And isn't it weird, whether you're a soldier, whether you're a cop, whether you're a fireman, whether you're EMS, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a nurse. I don't have anything good to say about lawyers, so I'm not gonna. You have to remember that by taking on the responsibility of helping the rest of the world, you cannot void yourself of the help that you need also. And you can't count on somebody else to come to you. I hope you do in the sense of talking to someone and going to someone. But damn it, if you go to a Sid's death, and there's 4 of you sitting around the firehouse after the call, you all want to cry. You all want to say, that sucked. And you may casually walk by each other. That was a tough one. Yeah, that was a tough one. But, that's what we do. It's not what you do. Nobody deserves to have to be there for that. But you've made that choice. So you're there. So please, again, I'm going to just end it here and let you know that taking care of yourself, trusting your partner, trusting your friend. If you can't trust your friend, if I can't go to Gary tomorrow and say, I talked to Mechanical High School and I'm a mess now. And on the way home, I stopped and got a 12-pack. If I can't tell him that tomorrow, then what the freak right do I have to call him my best friend? If I can't tell my wife something to that effect, and I probably wouldn't because I'd be sneaking, but she'd know as soon as I walked in the door, let's be honest. If you can't share your pain with your friend, then share it with a professional, share it with the AP, share it with somebody you just trust or somebody you don't even know if they're appropriate. Doc, EAP, again, The city of Troy was supposed to know everything about me within 2 weeks of me going to EAP because they paid for EAP and I was going to get ratted, right? 30 years I kept it between me, myself, and I. And the day that I finally told the people in my life was, you know, they call it Independence Day. Yeah, it was. But it was 30 years too late. It was 30 years too late. But damn it, I'm catching up now. I'm catching up and I am going to beat Gary's ass tomorrow so bad on the golf course. You wouldn't believe it. And I'm going to thank you guys for the inspiration to do that. So I'm out there, I'm active. Please look for my name. I do have some cards I'm going to leave up here. I didn't have many left, which I guess is a good thing. But I'll throw some cards on the table. This guy here, he calls me out of nowhere and says, talk to people for me. Come to Mechanicville. And I'm driving, I got Waze on because I don't know where this place is. And I go up the street and the car keeps telling me I'm going the wrong way. I'm turning right into the park. You're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. What the heck is going on? Well, it's because Waze automatically switched to fairways at Half Moon Golf Course. It was just automatic. It was great. So as I leave you, I love you all for what you do. I love you all for whatever you don't do. I love the world. I love the people that are in it. I know I'm being deep. I'm sorry, I'm a deep guy, as the chief will tell you. I love this guy for doing this. How awesome. Thank you. That's it. You're done.